There comes a moment in life when you realize that your strength alone is not enough. You try to hold everything together, but the more you grasp, the more things slip through your fingers. You fight battles in your mind, in your home, in your relationships, and in your heart. You do everything in your power to make things work, to fix what is broken, to carry the weight of responsibilities, fears, and expectations. But no matter how strong you think you are, eventually you reach a point where your strength is not enough. That is when you must remember God's hands are stronger than yours. The human tendency is to rely on self-sufficiency. From the moment we are born, we are taught to stand on our own, to take control, to push through hardships with our own willpower. But there will always come a time when life brings something too heavy for us to carry. It could be an illness that no doctor can fix, a betrayal that leaves you shattered, a financial burden that seems impossible to escape, or a deep emptiness in your soul that no success, no relationship, and no possession can fill. When you reach that place, you have two choices: to keep struggling under the weight, or to surrender it into the hands of the one who never grows weary. God's hands are strong enough to carry what you cannot. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 41:10, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." That means no matter what you face, no matter how weak you feel, His hands are mighty enough to sustain you. He is not like man. He does not grow tired. He does not become overwhelmed, and He does not fail. The same hands that created the heavens and the earth, the same hands that formed you in your mother's womb, are the hands that hold you even now. Some of you are carrying burdens that God never intended for you to carry. You spent years trying to control outcomes, trying to fix people, trying to manipulate circumstances in your favor. But the more you try to control things, the more out of control they become. That is because life was never meant to be carried on your own. God did not design you to walk through the storms of life in your own strength. He wants you to lay it all down at His feet, to release the burden and trust that His hands are capable of holding everything together. Think about a child holding on to something too heavy. No matter how much effort that child puts in, the weight is too much to bear. But the moment that child places it in the hands of a loving father, the struggle ends. That father who is stronger can carry what the child cannot. In the same way, your heavenly Father is waiting for you to stop struggling and place everything in His hands. It is not a sign of weakness to surrender to God. It is the greatest act of faith. The world tells you to keep pushing, to keep grinding, to never let go. But God says, "Be still and know that I am God." Psalm 46:10. He is asking you to trust Him, to release your worries, to stop fighting battles that belong to Him. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to carry the weight of tomorrow's problems. You don't have to pretend to be strong when you feel weak. God's hands are big enough, strong enough, and faithful enough to hold your life together, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. When you truly understand the strength of God's hands, fear loses its grip. You stop living in anxiety over things you cannot control. You stop losing sleep over problems that are beyond your ability to solve. You stop running yourself into exhaustion trying to manage everything on your own. Instead, you learn to rest in the assurance that the same God who holds the universe in place is holding you too. God's hands are not only strong, but they are also gentle. They are the hands that lift you when you fall, the hands that wipe away your tears, the hands that reach out when you feel like you're drowning, They are the hands that break chains of bondage, the hands that open doors no man can shut, the hands that provide when resources are scarce. His hands are mighty to save, mighty to heal, mighty to restore. So why are you still carrying what you should have placed in His hands? Why are you still worrying about things that He has already promised to take care of? Why are you still exhausting yourself trying to fix what only God can fix? His hands are stronger than yours. His wisdom is greater than yours. His power is beyond anything you could ever comprehend. And the moment you choose to release your burdens into His hands, that is the moment you will finally find peace. Trusting God is one of the greatest challenges in life because it requires something most people struggle with: letting go. We hold on to our plans, our worries, our desires, and even our pain, thinking that if we just try hard enough, we can control the outcome. But real trust in God means releasing the grip we have on our own lives and placing everything in His hands, even when we don't understand what He's doing. Letting go is difficult because it goes against human nature. From an early age, we are taught to take charge, to work hard, to push through struggles, and to make things happen for ourselves. We are conditioned to believe that if we want something bad enough, we have to do everything in our power to get it. And while hard work and perseverance are important, there comes a point where our efforts reach their limit. That is when trust begins. When we recognize that no matter how much we try, there are some things only God can handle. Many people say they trust God, but in reality, they still try to control everything. They pray about their problems, but as soon as they finish praying, they pick those problems right back up and continue to worry about them. They ask God to open doors, but when things don't happen on their timeline, they start forcing doors open on their own. They say they surrender their lives to Him, but deep down they are afraid of what will happen if they truly let go. But trust is not just words, it is action. Trust means releasing control, stepping back, and allowing God to work in His own way and His own time. Letting go means accepting that you will not always have the answers. There will be moments when God asks you to walk by faith even when you cannot see where you are going. Abraham was asked to leave his home and go to a land that God would show him without knowing the destination. Peter was asked to step out of the boat and walk on water without knowing if he would sink. Time and time again, the Bible shows us that true faith requires action before understanding. God does not always reveal the full picture, but He calls you to trust Him enough to take the next step, even when it doesn't make sense. One of the biggest obstacles to letting go is fear. Fear whispers, what if God doesn't come through? What if things don't go the way I want? What if I end up worse off? Fear keeps people trapped in anxiety, trying to control every detail of their lives because deep down they are afraid of what will happen if they don't. But fear and faith cannot coexist. The moment you choose to trust God, fear loses its power over you. The moment you decide to let go, you begin to walk in the peace that only He can give. Letting go also means surrendering the past. Some people are holding on to pain, bitterness, and regrets, refusing to release them into God's hands. They replay past mistakes over and over again, wondering how things could have been different. They hold on to old wounds, refusing to forgive those who hurt them. But you cannot fully trust God while clinging to the things He is asking you to release. His healing can only begin when you let go of the things that are weighing you down. Trusting God also means surrendering the future. Many people are consumed with worry about what tomorrow will bring. They stress over finances, careers, relationships, and decisions, trying to plan every detail of their lives. But Jesus said, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Matthew 6:34. When you trust God, you understand that He already knows what lies ahead. He is not just in control of today. He is in control of every moment that is to come. Your job is not to figure everything out. Your job is to trust the one who already has it figured out. Letting go is not giving up. It is choosing to believe that God's plan is better than yours. It is acknowledging that His wisdom is far greater than your understanding. It is resting in the truth that even when things seem out of control, He is still in control. It is surrendering your will, your desires, your fears, and your future into His hands, knowing that He will never fail you. There is a truth that every person must come to understand. God's plans are greater than ours. No matter how carefully we map out our lives, no matter how much effort we put into making things go our way, there will always come a moment when we realize that our plans are limited, but God's plans are beyond anything we could ever imagine. His ways are higher, His wisdom is deeper, and His vision stretches far beyond what we can see. People often struggle with this reality because they want to be in control. They want to dictate how things should go, when things should happen, and what the outcome should be. But life does not always unfold according to human expectations. Sometimes doors that seem perfect remain closed. Sometimes the opportunities we desperately want slip through our fingers. Sometimes things we never wanted come into our lives, changing everything. In those moments, it is easy to question God. It is easy to wonder why He allows certain things to happen. It is easy to doubt whether He is truly leading us. But faith is not about understanding every detail. It is about trusting that His plan is greater even when we don't see it. God's plans are not bound by human limitations. What looks like failure to us may be the foundation of something far greater. Joseph in the Bible had dreams of greatness, but instead of rising to power immediately, he was sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and thrown into prison. To the human eye, his life seemed like one disaster after another, but God had a plan. Every betrayal, every hardship, every painful moment was shaping him for the position God had prepared for him. If Joseph had been freed from prison too soon, he would have never been in the right place at the right time to interpret Pharaoh's dream and become second in command of Egypt. What seemed like a long, painful detour was actually the perfect path to his destiny. Many people make the mistake of measuring God's plan by their own timeline. They assume that if something does not happen when they expect it to, it must mean that God has forgotten them. But God is never in a hurry, and He is never late. His timing is precise, and His plan unfolds exactly as it should. There are seasons of waiting that serve a purpose. There are moments of delay that are actually acts of divine protection. There are times when what we want is not given to us because God has something far better in store. The job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the opportunity that passed you by. What if those things were never meant to be part of your story? What if God was redirecting you to something that would bring far greater blessing than you ever imagined? God's plans are not only greater, but they are also designed for your good. Even when you walk through trials, even when you experience pain, even when things seem to be falling apart, God is still working behind the scenes. The Bible says in Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. That means nothing is wasted. Every disappointment, every challenge, every unexpected turn is being woven into a plan that is far greater than anything you could design for yourself. The problem is that people often resist God's plan because it does not match their own. They cling to relationships that God is asking them to release. They chase after dreams that God never intended for them to pursue. They fight against change because they are afraid of the unknown. But surrender is the key. When you stop resisting, when you stop trying to force your own way, when you finally let go and trust that God knows what He is doing, that is when you will begin to see His plan unfold. God does not see as man sees. He sees the full picture. He sees what is ahead. He knows where the road leads. While you are worried about today, He has already prepared your tomorrow. While you are stressed about what you have lost, He is preparing something greater to take its place. While you are focused on what is in front of you, He is orchestrating something beyond your imagination. His plan is not just for your immediate comfort, it is for your eternal purpose. What He is doing in your life is not just about this moment, but about everything He has destined for you to become. It is not easy to trust when you do not understand. It is not easy to let go of your own plans when you have worked so hard for them. But when you truly believe that God's plans are greater, you will no longer live in fear of the unknown. You will no longer hold on to things that are not meant for you. You will no longer be discouraged when things don't go your way. Instead, you will find peace in knowing that the one who holds the universe in His hands is the same one guiding your life. Worry is one of the greatest thieves of peace. It creeps into the mind, takes hold of the heart, and begins to control the way a person thinks and lives. Worry drains energy, steals joy, and creates fear over things that may never even happen. It causes sleepless nights, restless days, and anxious thoughts that never seem to stop. But no matter how much a person worries, it never changes the outcome. Worry does not solve problems, it only magnifies them. It does not bring solutions, it only brings stress. Yet so many people find themselves trapped in this cycle, unable to break free. God never intended for His people to live in a state of anxiety. He did not design the human heart to carry the weight of the world. That is why He calls us to pray instead of worry. Philippians 4:6 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." This is not just a suggestion, it is a command. God knows that worry leads nowhere, but prayer opens the door to peace. When a person prays, they shift their focus from the problem to the one who holds the solution. They take their burdens off their own shoulders and place them in the hands of a God who is more than able to handle them. Prayer is the antidote to worry. It is not just a religious ritual, but a direct line of communication with the Creator of the universe. It is the act of surrendering every fear, every concern, and every unknown into the hands of a loving Father. Yet many people treat prayer as a last resort instead of a first response. They exhaust every human effort, try every possible solution, and only when they have reached the end of their own strength do they finally turn to God. But prayer was never meant to be a backup plan. It was meant to be the foundation of life. Some people hesitate to pray because they think their problems are too small for God to care about. They assume He is too busy with bigger issues, that their personal struggles are not important enough to bring before Him. But nothing could be further from the truth. The same God who created the vast galaxies is the same God who knows the number of hairs on your head. He cares about every detail of your life. No problem is too big for Him to handle, and no concern is too small for Him to notice. He invites His people to bring everything to Him, every fear, every need, every hope, and every worry. Worry is a sign of misplaced trust. It reveals that a person is depending on their own ability rather than God's power. When someone worries, they are essentially saying, "I don't believe God will take care of this." But when they choose to pray, they are saying, I trust that God is in control. Faith and worry cannot coexist. A person is either relying on themselves or they are trusting in God. And the more they pray, the less room worry has to take root in their heart. Prayer does not always change the situation immediately, but it always changes the person who prays. It shifts the focus from the problem to the presence of God. It replaces fear with faith. It takes the unknown and places it in the hands of the one who knows all things. And as a person prays more, they begin to see that God has always been in control. The things they once worried about no longer hold the same power over them because they have learned to release them to the one who has the final say. God has never failed to take care of his people. The same God who provided manna in the wilderness, who calmed the storm with a single word, who raised the dead to life, is the same God who hears every prayer today. He is not distant. He is not unaware. He is not powerless. He is present. He is listening, and he is more than able. Worry accomplishes nothing, but prayer changes everything. And when a person truly learns to pray instead of worry, they will experience a peace that the world cannot understand. Life is full of moments that do not make sense. There are times when doors close unexpectedly, when trials come without warning, when prayers seem to go unanswered, and when the path ahead is unclear. It is in these moments that many people question God. They wonder why he allows difficulties, why he doesn't always reveal his plans, why things do not happen the way they expect. But the truth is, God works in mysterious ways. His plans are far beyond human understanding. His methods are higher than human reasoning. And his timing is perfect even when it does not align with human expectation. Throughout Scripture, God has shown that he does not always work in the way people expect. When he wanted to free Israel from slavery in Egypt, he did not use an army. He sent a man named Moses with nothing but a staff and a word from God. When he wanted to defeat a giant named Goliath, he did not choose a mighty warrior. He chose a young shepherd boy with a slingshot and 5 stones. When he wanted to save the world, he did not send a conquering king. He sent his son, born in a manger, to die on a cross. God's ways are not man's ways. He does not operate according to human logic, and he does not need human approval to fulfill his purpose. Many times, people do not recognize God's hand at work because they are looking for him in the wrong places. They expect grand signs and immediate answers, but God often moves in quiet, unexpected ways. He can use trials to shape character, delays to build patience, disappointments to redirect paths, and even pain to bring about a greater purpose. What may seem like a setback is often a setup for something greater. What appears to be rejection is sometimes divine protection. What looks like an unanswered prayer is often God preparing something better than what was asked for. The story of Joseph in the Bible is a perfect example of how God's mysterious ways unfold. Joseph had dreams of greatness, but instead of rising to power immediately, he was sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and thrown into prison. If anyone had a reason to doubt God's plan, it was Joseph. But through every hardship, God was working behind the scenes. Every betrayal, every moment of suffering, every delay was leading him to the position God had prepared for him. When the time was right, Joseph was raised to power in Egypt. And the very brothers who betrayed him had to come to him for help. Looking back, Joseph could see that God had been in control the entire time. What was meant for evil, God used for good. God's mysterious ways are often best understood in hindsight. In the middle of the storm, it is hard to see his hand at work. In the midst of uncertainty, it is difficult to trust that He has a plan. But those who remain faithful will one day look back and realize that every step, even the painful ones, had a purpose. The job loss that seemed devastating at the time led to a better opportunity. The relationship that ended made room for the right one. The closed door that caused frustration protected from something that would have led to harm. Faith means trusting God even when nothing makes sense. It means believing that He is working even when there is no visible evidence. It means holding on to His promises even when everything seems to be going in the opposite direction. God's ways may be mysterious, but they are never without purpose. He sees what man cannot see. He knows what man cannot know. And He is always orchestrating something far greater than what can be imagined. He is never early, never late, and never wrong. What may seem confusing now will one day make perfect sense, because God is always in control, even when life feels uncertain. Patience and faith are inseparable. A person cannot truly walk in faith without learning to wait on God's timing, and they cannot develop patience without trusting that God's promises will come to pass. Yet in a world that demands instant results, patience is often seen as a weakness. People want quick answers, fast solutions, and immediate breakthroughs. But God does not operate on human timeline. He moves according to His perfect plan, and that plan often requires waiting. The question is, will faith remain strong in the waiting, or will impatience lead to doubt? Patience is not just about waiting. It is about how a person waits. Many people claim to have faith in God, but when things take longer than expected, their faith begins to waver. They grow frustrated, question God's plan, and sometimes even take matters into their own hands. But true faith stands firm even in delays. True faith says, I may not see the answer yet, but I trust that God is working. True patience is not passive. It is active trust in God's perfect timing. Throughout the Bible, God's greatest promises were often fulfilled after long periods of waiting. Abraham was promised that he would be the father of many nations, but years passed before he saw the fulfillment of that promise. During that time, he had moments of doubt. He tried to force the promise by having a child through Hagar instead of waiting on God's perfect plan. But God's promise was not forgotten, and in the right time, Isaac was born. The delay was not a denial, it was part of the process. If Abram had waited patiently, he would have avoided unnecessary hardship. This is a lesson for everyone. When impatience leads to human solutions, it often brings trouble, but when faith leads to patience, God's perfect plan is revealed. Waiting on God is not easy. The human heart wants certainty, and when answers do not come quickly, doubt begins to whisper. What if God has forgotten? What if this prayer will never be answered? But faith silences those doubts. Faith says God is faithful. He has never failed before, and He will not fail now. Faith is what kept Noah building the ark even when there was no rain. Faith is what kept Joseph trusting God even when he was in prison. Faith is what kept Moses leading the Israelites even when the Red Sea stood in front of them. And in each case, patience was required before the promise was fulfilled. One of the greatest tests of patience is when God is silent. There are moments when it feels as though prayers go unanswered, as though God is distant. But silence does not mean absence. God is always working even when He is not speaking. A seed does not grow the moment it is planted. It is buried in the soil, unseen for a time. But underneath the soil, life is forming. When the season is right, that seed breaks through the ground and grows into what it was meant to be. This is how God works. The waiting season is not wasted. It is a season of preparation. Patience is a sign of maturity. A child cries for immediate gratification, but an adult understands that some things take time. Likewise, spiritual maturity is shown in the ability to trust God, even when the answer does not come right away. A person who lacks patience will always struggle with faith, because faith requires believing before seeing. The greatest blessings often come to those who are willing to wait, because in the waiting, God prepares the heart, strengthens character, and deepens faith. Faith without patience leads to frustration, and patience without faith leads to hopelessness. But when faith and patience work together, a person can stand firm no matter how long the wait. They do not rush ahead of God, nor do they give up in despair. They walk in peace, knowing that every delay has a purpose, and every moment of waiting is an opportunity to trust God more. And in the right time, the promise will come to pass, because God is always faithful to those who wait on Him with unwavering faith. Trusting God means more than just saying a prayer and walking away. It means fully surrendering a situation into His hands and resisting the urge to take it back. Many people bring their burdens before God, asking Him to take control, but as soon as they finish praying, they pick those burdens right back up, worrying about how things will turn out. But true faith is not just about placing something in God's hands, it is about leaving it there. Surrender is one of the hardest things to do, because human nature wants control. People want to fix problems, figure out solutions, and determine outcomes. They want to know when, how, and why things will happen. But faith requires a different response. Faith says, God, I give this to you, because I know you are wiser, stronger, and more capable than I am. Faith acknowledges that God's ways are higher and His plans are greater, even when they do not make sense. Many people struggle with this because fear and doubt try to take over. They wonder if God is really listening. They question whether He will come through. They look at their circumstances and begin to worry again, even after praying. But the moment a person takes their problem back into their own hands, they remove it from God's. They step out of trust and into anxiety. They allow fear to replace faith. The Bible says in 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. Casting is not the same as holding on. Casting means throwing something away from yourself and leaving it where it lands. God does not want His people to carry burdens that were never meant for them. He asks them to release those burdens into His hands and trust that He will handle them in His perfect way. Abraham had to learn this lesson when God promised him a son. He believed the promise, but as years passed without any sign of fulfillment, he and Sarah decided to take matters into their own hands. Instead of waiting on God, they tried to force the promise through human effort, and as a result, they faced unnecessary struggles. But when Abraham finally surrendered completely to God's timing, the promise was fulfilled exactly as God had planned. This is what happens when people truly leave things in God's hands. He moves in ways that only He can. Worry does not change a situation, but it does change the heart. It steals peace, drains energy, and weakens faith. It causes people to doubt God's goodness and forget His past faithfulness. But when a person truly hands something over to God and refuses to take it back, they experience a peace that cannot be explained. Philippians 4:6 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Peace comes when a person fully trusts that God is in control Leaving something in God's hands does not mean being passive. It does not mean doing nothing or ignoring responsibility. It means doing what God has called a person to do and trusting Him with the rest. It means praying, believing, and moving forward without fear. It means resisting the temptation to manipulate outcomes or force solutions. It means being patient even when things are uncertain. And it means standing firm in faith, knowing that God is always at work, even when His hand is not yet visible. God is faithful. He has never failed. He has never made a mistake. He has never forgotten a promise. When something is placed in His hands, it is in the best place it could possibly be. There is no safer place, no wiser plan, no greater power. And when a person truly surrenders their burdens to Him and refuses to take them back, they will see Him move in ways that only He can. When you put something in God's hands, leave it there. Trusting Him fully means surrendering every fear, every burden, and every unanswered question without trying to control the outcome. Worry and doubt will always try to creep in, but faith pushes them aside and says, God, I trust You no matter what. His timing is perfect, His ways are higher, and His plans are always for the good of those who love Him. Patience and faith go hand in hand. Waiting on God is never wasted time. It is preparation for what He is bringing to pass.